You want to be the very best, like no one ever was? In order to catch them all, you might as well learn all you can about the most elusive pocket monsters this side of Celadon City. You don't need to be a Detective Pikachu to pick up on these clues, but expand your knowledge and Pokedex with ScreenRant. Here, we'll give you 25 surprising facts about your favorite fighting creatures. First things first, let's talk about the most famous of them all. Pikachu. As the face of the franchise, Pikachu has been featured in Pokemon Snap, Hey You Pikachu, and a multitude of other titles through Pokemon history. The character's name, Pikachu, is actually an onomatopoeia for the Japanese word meaning squealing and shining. It doesn't take a detective, least of all a Detective Pikachu, to make the connection between squealing and shining, Pikachu's own characteristics. There's a reason a character like Meowth isn't front and center like Pikachu. Actually, this was done purposely. In the Pokedex, the mouse-like Pokemon is number 25, while the cat-like Meowth is number 52. While both Pokemon have been known to speak, one thing Pikachu has over Meowth is their ability to surf, which we all learned from Pokemon Stadium. Ironically, neither Pikachu nor Meowth were originally intended to serve as the main Pokemon of the game. Initially, Clefairy was to have that distinction, but this was before the game's developers thought otherwise and decided the cuter and smaller Pikachu would be more appealing to youngsters. The original Pocket Monsters manga featured an Ash-like character named Red as the human hero. The Pokemon were able to speak, and while Pikachu was part of Red's team, Clefairy was indeed Red's more gregarious and outgoing Pokemon. In fact, in the manga, Clefairy is a more bumbling lead, providing comic relief for this lighter and more adult version of the story. As the video game was being developed, the creative team noted the burgeoning popularity of Pikachu and made the electric mouse into the hero's counterpart, putting Clefairy on the sidelines. While Clefairy and Pikachu had their origins in the earliest days of the franchise, Munna joined the storyline much later. Munna, which evolves into Musharna when the Moonstone is brought before it, has the ability to eat the dreams of both its fellow Pokemon as well as the people around it. You may recognize this bulbous pink creature as a life form who joined the Pokemon roster much later in the brand's lifespan, during the 5th generation of the series. Surprisingly, Munna was actually mentioned as early as the first game in the entire franchise. In the game, a trainer mentions a pink creature with floral markings on its body. This description matches Munna and confirms for us that the Pokemon was in the works for quite some time. While these two Pokemon are known for their less welcoming traits, the dirty, smog-expelling Koffing and Weezing probably aren't all terrible. But in the anime, they were regularly associated with the villains, Jesse and James of Team Rocket. While Koffing and Weezing's names perfectly match the toxic gas that they spew, their titles were originally much different. Supposedly, their names were first going to be Nye and Law, in reference to the NY and LA abbreviations for the polluted city of New York and Los Angeles. While many other cities on Earth can compete for the title of smoggiest, these cities are world famous and might have proved to be interesting alternatives for the two Pokemon everyone loves to hate. While Pikachu and even Clefairy were the first two most popular Pokemon in the earliest days of the manga, can you name the first Pokemon ever created for the franchise? We'll give you a hint. It looks kind of like a rhinoceros, and even though it's the earliest pocket monster to be conceived, it appears in the Pokedex as Pokemon number 112. If you guessed Rhydon, then you're correct. According to Ken Sugimori, one of the original game developers, Rhydon was the earliest creature designed. And while it doesn't have as much fame as others, if you hold your fishing pole over a Rhydon statue at the Pokemon gyms in the first generation games, you'll get a Magikarp. While Pokemon don't really have a basis in reality beyond a creepy similarity between illegal animal fighting rings, sometimes life imitates art. That's definitely the case for the Pikachurin. In 2008, Japanese scientists at the Osaka Bioscience Institute discovered a special protein that acts as a conduit sending signals between the eye and the brain. It helps connect signals between the retina and neurons through natural electric means. Its electric nature is what prompted scientists to associate it with the most famous electric mouse of all. Another protein was discovered 3 years prior, and the scientists at Sloan Kettering who made the find gave it the title POK erythroid myeloid ontogenic factor, or Pokemon for short. Pokemon are always evolving, much like how humankind is evolving. While we become smarter and more technologically advanced as we share information, Pokemon become stronger and more agile the more they fight each other. It's an interesting dynamic, but one that gets tested by the existence of Slowbro. The creative team behind Pokemon threw us all for a loop when they decided that Pokemon like Slowbro can devolve, unlike other Pokemon on the market. While that seems to make this Pokemon less desirable to many a fighter looking to increase their competitive edge, the devolving doesn't seem to hurt its popularity. That's probably because many human cultures in the world of Pokemon view this creature's lower iteration Slowpoke as a delicacy. Now, we definitely feel bad for the guy. In our current age, we'll soon be able to do what we want with genetic material, creating life forms in a lab. It's a creepy thought, but one that doesn't seem entirely impossible with the evolving technology of our era. We'll see if humankind actually has enough morality to avoid creating any kind of illegitimate or dangerous life forms, unlike the scientists in the world of Pokemon. According to Pokemon legend, Ditto was actually created in a laboratory in an attempt to make a duplicate copy of the mysterious and powerful Pokemon known as Mew. While these experts did eventually make Mew-Two from Mew, they created the less powerful Pokemon Ditto. This limber pink Pokemon is still useful as part of your arsenal, especially if you want to replicate other creatures for a short time. Unlike Mew, many Pokemon masters likely avoid the Smeargle. Unfortunately, Smeargles just don't have the same appeal as other Pokémon monsters because their stats are some of the worst in the game. However, slow and steady can win the race, metaphorically at least.
Wow, Lima's partner's a Smeargle!
If you show these guys some patience and work with them to level up, they have the ability to learn every move in the game. The dexterity and adaptability available to them might make them an enviable addition to your Pokemon lineup. While it can't do moves like Chatter, Shadow, or Struggle, its Sketch move allows it to copy its opponent's previous move, and the paintbrush at the end of its tail oozes a colored pigment that matches its emotion. You should know that Pokemon aren't all based on pure fantasy. A lot of the creatures that are used to fight in the games have looks and abilities inspired by real creatures. Take Drowzee, for instance. The long-snouted animal that eats dreams is based off the South American tapir. They both look alike, and in accordance with South American folktales, the tapir had the ability to chow down on unsuspecting people's dreams. Other Pokemon with matching real-world animal looks are the Caterpie and the Eastern Tiger Swallowtail Caterpillar, Magikarp and the Yellow-Eye Rockfish, Victreebel and Meat-Eating Pitcher Plant, Stunfisk and a Stargazer, Vileplume and a Rafflesia arnoldii, and Gorbis and a long-nosed Chimera, to name a few. Azurill can change its own gender. And if anyone remembers correctly, this ability was a major problem for the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, since they were able to change gender due to the overlooked quality of the frogs who were able to change gender at will. Azurill's gender will change as they evolve. In a different way, Mr. Mime can also identify as a different gender. While the Pokemon is born as either gender, it will always have Mr. in its name. It's actually a little bit easier to tell male and female Pikachu apart, by the tail. Male Pikachu have the sharp, square edge, where females have a bulbous heart shape at the end of their tails. In rock, paper, scissors, paper always beats rock. But if you were to play your cards right when facing off your Rock-type Pokemon against another Master's Pokemon, Rock-type has the potential to defeat any of the 18 different types of Pokemon out there. A Redditor did the research and published his results stating that a Pokemon could have no damage with Dragon, Electric, Fighting, Ghost, Ground, Normal, Poison, and Psychic Pokemon, a half resist with Grass and Bug Pokemon, a 16th resist with Dark and Steel Pokemon, and normal damage Fairy, Fire, Flying, Ice, and Water Pokemon. The only type of Pokemon it would really be vulnerable to would be a ×2 weakness to Rock. While Pokemon as a franchise has always tended to be brighter and sunnier than a lot of other anime and manga series on the market, there are still some parts of the series that seem more at home in a horror film or a cautionary tale. The gray, red-eyed, snaggletooth ghost-type Pokemon known as Banette is creepy enough. Like a self-cursing voodoo doll with a fighting spirit, this creature lurks in dark alleys and the seedy underbellies of towns and cities. It has a strong grudge that it just can't seem to get over. Speaking of grudges, while many Kadabras probably don't know their history, the first Kadabra probably had a bone to pick with Mother Nature. Legend has it that the original Kadabra was really a psychic human boy who awoke one fateful morning to find himself in the form of a Kadabra. In the wild, Pokemon of the same species and type can appear with slightly different physical features, but none as perplexing as Spinda. With their swirling facial features, you may never see two similar-looking Spinda. It's been said that up to 4 billion different Spindas can be found in the wild, but it's likely that however many Spindas are in the wild is the total number of Spinda with different physical traits that you'll find. If you want to get concrete numbers on the actual amount of Spinda out there, you'd need to go into the mountains to track them. While Spinda think they're moving in direct straight lines, they wander and stagger about, making them difficult to follow. So it makes perfect sense that their most common attack move is Teeter Dance. Some Pokemon seem to come in a 2-for-1 deal. At least that's how they seem, since their bodies reveal that they're actually two symbiotic life forms living together. How can you tell if one Pokemon is actually two different creatures? Usually it's the fact that they have two separate faces. Wobbuffet, for instance, has a secret. It's got a bulbous blue body that often distracts for the fact that its black tail has a set of eyes as well. According to the Wobbuffet Pokedex entry, the creature will protect its tail at all costs, leading us to believe that the tail is actually the brains of the operation. Similarly, Parasect is an insect with a mushroom on its back, and the parasitic mushroom is actually what controls the creature. Without the mushroom, Parasect would lose its motor functions. Pokemon often have names that either are connected to their features or inspired by other interesting characteristics. In several instances, Pokemon have numbers spelled out in their names. Articuno has the Spanish word for 1, uno, in its title. Zapdos and Moltres have the Spanish words for 2 and 3 in their names as well. Other names with more obscure meanings include Lapras, which is named for the scientist who documented the tides called Pierre-Simon Laplace, and Nidoran, named for the Japanese words Nido, or 2 degrees, and Ran, or orchid, for the 2 varying colors it comes in. Nidoran's 2 colors match the purple or blue colors that can be found in orchids. Psychic Pokemon usually can't withstand attacks from Ghost Pokemon, Dark Pokemon, and Bug Pokemon. You might be wondering why this eclectic mix of Pokemon types might prove to be a weakness against those with psychic abilities. The answer, however, is rather simple. Most people have fears of darkness, of insects, and of the idea of the undead. So, naturally, these 3 objects and/or ideas would serve as major obstacles for Pokemon whose powers revolve around the mind. Worse still, a Pokemon like Xatu, which can sense both the past and future concurrently like Muad'Dib from the Dune series, would likely have an extra hard time with those 3 other Pokemon types. Unfortunately, you could be the strongest mystic around, and even in that case, mind doesn't always win over muscle. None have occupied the desires of collectors as much as the holographic Charizard. First edition holographic Charizards could get you upwards of $2,600, but maybe more if you play your cards right. While the Shining Charizard will fetch you less money, you could still score up to $1,300 for this special Dark Charizard from the less popular Neo Destiny series. Its 5 energy attack, which was considered to be a lot of firepower at the time of its release, sets it apart from other Pokemon cards from the same era. If you bought a pack of cards with a black triangle printed on them and kept them sealed all this time, you could fetch upwards of around $11,000. Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee aren't just 2 mighty fighting creatures, they're actually named after 2 mighty fighting men. Hitmonchan is named in honor of Jackie Chan, and Hitmonlee is named after the one and only Bruce Lee. Their Japanese names are actually tributes to other stars who were household names in their home countries. Boxer Hiroyuki Ebihara is the inspiration for the Japanese version of Hitmonchan, and kickboxer Tadashi Sawamura is the inspiration for the Japanese version of Hitmonlee. Ironically, Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee weren't considered to be part of the same evolutionary tree and thus weren't related when they were first introduced. But their common names and fighting abilities led Pokemon creators to group them together. A third parallel evolution, known as Hitmontop, isn't inspired by any famous person. Pokemon have come a long way from their humble manga roots. Not only have their video games, playing cards, toys, and cartoons dominated store shelves and airwaves, they've been featured as balloons in parades and conquered the box office and movie theaters the world over. More importantly, they have gone the way of presidents, famous historical figures, and hockey if you're in Canada. That's right, Pokemon have been featured on actual currency. The country of Niue, a small island in the Pacific Ocean, went so far as to create coins in 2011 featuring the likenesses of Pikachu, Meowth, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander. If you had to spend a silver dollar for a silver Pikachu, which would you choose? Sometimes, Pokemon aren't the cutest looking creatures around, whether they're on money or not. While behemoth beasts like Charizard and Blastoise could definitely kick butt in a back alley, even smaller pocket monsters have a darker edge. Take Cubone. While this little guy has the same build as a cute critter like Charmander, the skull it wears on its head isn't just some kind of helmet. It's actually the skull of its deceased mother. Poliwag isn't so cute either, because the swirl over the stomach of this amphibious creature was actually designed to look like the spiraling innards of a tadpole. And while you may think these Pokemon have darker edges, Yamask is probably the darkest, since the face in its possession is actually that of a person long deceased. In keeping with this dark tone, there's actually an unofficial disorder for those negatively impacted by an infamous part of the Pokemon game. It's called Lavender Town Syndrome, named for the town in the game that seems innocent at first, but plays host to an unsettling vibe that could creep into your life and bring your mood down with it. While your character is in the seemingly plain Lavender Town from the original game, you'll hear music that's reportedly scored with isochronic tones. These are singular notes that pulse within a larger piece of music and can have some subtle influence on the way you perceive the sound. And when it comes to Lavender Town, it just might bring you down. While music can transcend language barriers and be understood whether it makes you happy or sad, some aspects of Pokemon are harder to convert from their original form. Ever wonder why some random Pokemon could use the move Splash even if they have no business being in, near, or around water? Well, you can blame the translators first tasked with deciphering the original Japanese game and converting its text into English. A Spoink Pokemon may not be a water type, but they have the ability to splash because that word was actually a mistranslation from Japanese to English of the word hop. This funny misunderstanding ended up allowing non-water types to send water towards their opponents without much explanation. At the end of the day, Pokemon may be highly sophisticated animals, but it's too bad they're not real. Yep, the closest we'll get to seeing these pocket monsters interacting with our real world is footage from the Detective Pikachu movie. Yet some animals in our own world might be sophisticated enough to play a Pokemon game. At least that's what a betta fish may have proved. In 2014, a betta fish named Grayson Hopper participated in an experiment in which different parts of its fishbowl were assigned different controls on a Pokemon game. When the fish moved to a new part of the bowl, a different command was sent to that game. Surprisingly, the fish chose to play with Charmander and was able to defeat a Squirtle at the start of the game, whether or not it actually knew what it was doing. And our last bit of Pokemon lore comes in the form of a theory that seems to rival the expanded mythology of Adventure Time. Some fans believe that before the start of the games we all know and love, the world of Pokemon was the setting for a brutal and destructive war. That's why most of the characters are kids, wandering the world unattended, catching and fighting with pocket monsters. The in-game character Lieutenant Surge even says that electric Pokemon saved him during the war. It's also thought that the entire language spoken by humans in Pokemon, whether it be Japanese, English, or whatever is spoken and understood by the people watching the show or playing the game, is derived from Pokemon, not from humans. Which may explain why most Pokemon can't speak but can say their names. Have you caught all the facts that we just thrown your way? Are there any insane, crazy, or just plain twisted ideas about Pokemon that we may have missed? Let us know in the comments section below. And while you wait for the next game to come out, click on the subscribe button to stay up to date on all those creatures lurking in the dark parts of the forest, the deepest corner of the sea, and just off the beaten path. ScreenRant's got your back while you catch 'em all. See you next time.